we are quite a few years behind in doing. So all fascinating. Kind of a lot of cleanup and long overdue changes that they're working on. And then update number 3 is the Freeport Downtown Vision. The council did approve funding for phases 2 and 3. There's some work going on behind the scenes to get those projects started. I think I mentioned last month there'll be a design week coming up in October with dates to be announced. There'll be a series of open houses, workshops, and public meetings on different topics that pertain to issues in the village. Information on that will be forthcoming. And you may have noticed some of the early action projects underway. There's a painted crosswalk at Holbrook. There's some painted lobsters. Those are supposed to be some traffic calming measures. There's the North Main Street Parklet, which a lot of people seem to be enjoying their ice cream on North Main Street. And there's been some improvements to what they're calling Hot Dog Park, which is a little park near the Historical Society and behind Starbucks that some town volunteers, the Historical Society, LL Bean, and a few others work to kind of clean that up. And that place is hopping on busy days with people enjoying the outdoor seating. So that's an update. If you want a more in-depth glance, I'm happy to bring a member from the project team here as they move forward.
All right. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the review of the minutes from the June and July meetings. We don't have enough people for the July minutes, so we will approve those at the next meeting. So we have the June 16th minutes to approve. Are there any comments or edits that need to be made to these minutes? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes as written and read.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
You at that meeting or no?
You were not here, that's right. Todd was not here, sorry. All right, it's unanimous with those voting. All right, the next item on our agenda tonight is a review of the tabled items. The first item is the Desert of Maine change of use and site plan amendment. And I'll have Caroline provide a brief summary.
Sure. So you guys just did a site walk on this. You have seen this plan twice and have further worked on their plans. But basically, they're changing the use of the property to add the new use of nature-based commercial enterprise. As we've already talked about, that's an allowed use under the new overlay district. They're in the rural residential zone, so the standards of the overlay district and the underlying RR1 apply. There's a mini golf course proposed. We've talked about landscaping, associated lighting, some parking lot improvements. There really haven't been a whole lot of changes since the last 2 times they presented with you. They did provide some information on traffic this time, and they did work with Adam Bliss, the town engineer, regarding stormwater management and erosion control, and he did review the plans and he provided a memo with his comments. It is on private utilities. They are a public water supplier. They're not proposing an expansion to their septic at this time. They did have to tweak their lighting plan for safety, so they are proposing parking lot lighting of 16-foot fixtures as required per the ordinance. They will be full cutoff, and they did include a photometrics plan. No signage is included in this, but they're aware that potentially if they want to add signage in the future, they could have to come back to you. And the applicants there here, if you want to hear from them, or if you have any questions for either of us.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicants.
I'm Doug. I'll just keep this quick because this is our 3rd time before you. You know the importance of this project to us, and most of the work that's happened in the last month has really been engineering around stormwater, and so that's the bulk of it. 2 representatives from Harriman have been hard at work, so I'll really just turn it over to them for a walkthrough of some of those changes since you last heard from us.
You get past a mass, the rest are easy. Good evening. My name is Tom Emery. I'm a licensed landscape architect, and with me is Frank Crabtree, professional civil engineer from Harriman. I've been with Harriman many, many years and done hundreds, if not thousands, of stormwater management plans for projects big and small. The first plan is simply to show you the context. The light here is the entire Desert of Maine property. Here in the light color is the Desert of Maine. The main parking lot is in this area. This is the show the scale of the proposed. This is to show the scale of the proposed mini golf relative to the rest of the project. It shows the existing campground road that we walked down. This is drawing C30-1, which is a grading, drainage, and erosion control plan. If we get into technical questions, I'll defer to Frank on those. But just as an overview, again, Desert of Maine Road is up here. There are two large proposed parking lots, the lower parking lot here, which we walked, and the upper parking lot. And again, the sort of light greenish blue area is the proposed mini golf. Again, the light green area here is treatment pond 1, and the other green area here is treatment pond 2. All the stormwater that currently flows in this direction with the new parking lot will continue to flow in that direction, will be captured in the treatment pond, and will be filtered out and discharged in drains toward the drainage ditch here. Similarly, the new mini golf and the existing parking lot flow in this direction. They will be captured, the stormwater will be captured and treated in this location and then discharged to the drainage swale there. We did meet with Adam Bliss and had lots of discussions about stormwater and the approach we're going to take to this, and I think that's indicated in his comments. And then lastly is the landscape buffer plan. This is at a slightly larger scale. Here's the new main parking lot. Here's the lower parking lot, the upper parking lot, and the mini golf. As Doug described on site, next to the mini golf, there's a berm proposed in this area with mixed plantings for screening here. And then there is a fence along the edge of the parking lot to screen headlights. And the 15-foot existing buffer line is this inner line here. Here is the property line. And this plan shows much of the buffering at this end of the parking lot simply because of its closer proximity to the property line. But as you heard on site today, the approach is going to be, Doug will meet with the abutter, and we will shift this parking and the fencing as needed to provide the greatest buffering for the view from the house toward the parking and toward the main building. And again, this is the combination of mixed plantings, which include primarily indigenous materials, red maple, amelanchier, spruce, and pine tree. And that's the overview. I should just mention, as we discussed on site, we did end up putting in area lighting for the parking lots. I discussed that. We have electrical engineers on staff. We tried to work with things like the lower bollard lights. And once, as licensed professionals, you're into a lighting plan, you have all the legal responsibility that goes with that, which means you have to design to IES standards, which sets all the standards for minimum illumination within the parking lot. So that's why we ended up with 16-foot tall poles or fixture height. Gives us sort of a trade-off between a shorter pole and having to have more of them, and avoiding the tallest poles and having just very few of them, but having that unsightly impact on a nice location like this. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from the board?
On the fence along between the abutter and the parking lot, what kind of fence is that going to be?
That's a stockade fence, and currently it's proposed to be 6 feet tall.
Okay, and that's down below grade. That's not at the.
That's down slope here, and then there's the same fence up here, which again can be relocated here depending upon the final discussions with the abutter.
Okay.
In terms of where they would like that fence. But this plan includes includes at present 140 feet of fence here and then a fence the length of that parking lot with a slight return on each end.
Okay. And I'm just going to go back to a comment that I made last meeting, and I'm sure there's not much we can do about it at this meeting, but while the current operator and landowner, I think, has demonstrated certainly the best of intentions and also the best of intentions to continue being responsible, being a responsible neighbor going forward. If there's some way that the town can consider when we do make, changes to ordinances in the future, that the manner in which a business is operated should also be considered as part of the approval process for this. And I'm not sure there's much we can do about it now, but I think that's just something that we consider going forward.
I just wanted to clarify something that we didn't discuss, but we mentioned on the sidewalk, because we don't discuss on sidewalks, that the fencing and the height of the fencing that is currently on this plan, if this is approved as is, that's what's approved. And that we all know that that's what we're approving. And if they want to adjust that down the line or next week, it has to come in to be changed, or we have to hold off on approval. That's the case, right?
Yep, they would need to reach out and see what process they need to take to amend their plan.
And if we were interested in putting I don't know, what do we put on it, some sort of condition that they increase the fence height to agree, I mean, it's kind of nebulous to do that, so we can't really put anything on this to say, agree with your neighbor.
You could put a condition on there if you want to give them the flexibility. You could say, I think on the site walk, there was mention that an 8-foot fence or something higher might be preferred. So you could add a condition and just say, at the agreement of the applicant and the neighbor, the applicant could change the fence to be 8 feet in height versus the 6 feet approved. And then you could say, like, with town planner approval, or you could just let them do it. But yeah, you could add a condition for that. I mean, it seems on the site walk that there weren't objections from either party, and it would save them potentially from having to come back before you, which there's other things you might want to do on a Wednesday night.
Any other comments or questions?
I have one other
Yep.
question. I alluded to it on the sidewalk, and I don't have the last set of papers with me. So I just wanted to ask a question and get it clarified, because it probably doesn't matter anymore. But on the 8-4 application that they sent us data on, I don't think we got this again. I think we saw this earlier, although I don't know how we did that. But it said something about, let me just read what I wrote. 2 on-site restrooms were available, and it had some mention about the 650, whatever the term is, allowance of wastewater calculations. And in here, now, on this 818 piece of paper, it says that they're proposed to use the restrooms in the center, the Welcome Center, and I just would like to make sure where we are with that in this proposal right now.
Sure. Turn that over to the applicant.
Yeah, I can answer that. So I think the plan all along has been to use the two restrooms that we have in the Welcome Center. And when we built those with future expansion in mind. So the septic, for example, was the largest one that we were given 3 options. We picked the largest one. Right now it's size for 625 gallons per day. And it gets, fairly light use during most days. So I feel like there's quite a bit of capacity left over. When we visit other mini golf courses, and I visited a lot of mini golf courses, I typically see one bathroom per course. So We are installing a water meter on that, on those bathrooms, just to monitor how much flow is going to the septic and to see if we need to make an adjustment. For now, it feels like more than enough.
Okay, thank you. It was more confusing to me because in one place it said it was on site, but I read it to mean there was some, like an outhouse type of thing or something on the mini golf side, but on the other one it says, you know, in the center, and I didn't realize that the two you're talking about are actually the same thing.
Sorry for the confusion. It's always been the
my
same.
problem, sorry.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did, thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other comments or questions from the board? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Do you want to take public
Oh,
comment?
my apologies, thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this application? Glad I asked. All right, being none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. And I am going to put in, I'm going to change the motion as written by adding a sentence at the end of subparagraph 1 regarding the increasing the stockade fence from 6 feet is called out up to 8 feet with town planner approval. My motion is as follows. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and site plan amendment for Hestead Family Holding LLC for a change of use and site plan amendment to add the use of nature-based commercial enterprise to the existing uses on the site of Desert of Maine, Tax Assessor Map 22, Lot 8, to be built substantially as proposed on plans dated 8/4/21, revised 8/18/21, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport zoning ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives to the Project Review Board meetings and hearings on subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. And here I'm adding, provided additionally, that the stockade fence shown on the south property line, presently called out as 6 feet in height, can be increased to a maximum of 8 feet in height with approval of the town planner. Going back to the written, to the prepared motion, section 2, prior to any site work, including but not limited to clearing of the site and prior to issuance of any building permits, the applicant shall do the following. A, establish a performance guarantee in the amount to cover the cost of all site work associated with the project to be reviewed and approved by town engineer in any form acceptable to the town attorney. The performance guarantee shall cover the cost of all site work, including but not limited to erosion control, drainage, landscaping and walkways, parking areas, etc. Along with the performance guarantee, a non-refundable administrative fee and the rate established by the town council be paid. B, establish an escrow account in the amount of $4,600 to cover the cost of plan review and inspections of the site improvements by the town engineer. C, developer have a pre-construction meeting with the town engineer. And finally, D, applicant enter into a maintenance agreement for the stormwater management system with the town of Freeport to be recorded in the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
All right, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Question, Caroline, do we need to read the motions in their entirety now that we're masked? I'm not sure
You
what.
don't have to. You did a great job, though.
It was really nice for it.
I wish you
Yeah.
said that 4 years ago.
Well, you had to, we were doing it on Zoom for a best practice since people weren't here to get the handout so they could clearly understand. But
Great.
yeah, if you're not changing it, you can say, you
As
know,
read and-
as read and written.
Written.
Yep.
Okay,
Or you can read the whole thing.
but that was a great job. All right. The next item on our agenda are the reviews. The first one is the Down East Woodworks addition, change of use, and site plan amendment. And I will turn it over to Caroline to give us a summary.
Sure, so Max is here, his family owns the Down East Woodwork building on US Route 1. They purchased it about a decade ago, and based upon some comments written by past staff. They knew manufacturing and processing was allowed, but didn't realize they needed to get approval. So they came in to do an addition, and we found out that not only did they need approval to do an addition, but they also needed it for the after-the-fact change of use. So a lot of this is existing conditions, which is why you saw a lot of, what you did in your packet, and then they've added some new materials based upon the addition. So they have a couple things outstanding, but they're here to introduce it tonight. Like I said, the building's existing. It was years ago, it was previously used as a school that's been there for about a decade. They're proposing to add about 1,800 square feet of building, 450 new square feet of pavement. Access is existing, the parking's existing. They're gonna do a little cleanup and make sure that they provide ADA parking, which will be signed, sized, and striped according to any requirements. They do have to work out some stormwater details with Adam Bliss, the town engineer. Due to the size, it's really gonna be drip edge, rain garden, but still stuff that we need to see the details on, so they're working on that. They need to get a capacity letter from the sewer district, and that's forthcoming. No signage. They will have some lighting, which is required for egress, and they will provide information. They aren't proposing any changes to the existing buffering. There is some existing vegetation down there. They will have to remove a little bit of vegetation for the addition. They do have an overhead door. This is on the Route 1 South, so the Section 527 standards for commercial districts do apply to any of the changes that are before you tonight. And Max is here if the board has questions.
Yeah, hi. Again, my name's Max Jennings. I'm here representing Downey Food Works.
Sorry, you'll need to walk to the microphone,
I didn't know
or
if
it's okay.
someone with a-
It's all right, or use the handheld if it's still around. I don't know, did they walk off?
This is perfect.
They might have walked off with it,
So
okay.
yes, as Caroline announced, I am Max Jennings. I'm an employee and son of an owner of Downey Food Works. And, yeah, I guess I would just start by, Caroline summarized that correctly. We're in the process of doing this. I understand that there are a few more additions and information I need to share with the board. But I'd welcome any feedback or any questions that you have regarding our planned addition or any of the change of use retroactively.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? What color garage door are you proposing? The building's white, right?
White,
currently?
so we're planning doing the same board and batten around the whole,
Yep.
matching the original, or the current building, and then the garage door stick with the white.
Okay.
Yeah. I did have a couple of handouts, but maybe that's something that I'll have to issue for the next month, regarding the lighting that we have chosen and sticking with full cutoff lights strictly around the new entryway, on both sides of the garage door and on the back service door. And so that's one item that I can address. The rain garden, we've decided on a couple of different perennial native grasses to include in there that I believe Adam Bliss had requested some more specifics around that. Have had difficulty contacting the Freeport Sewer District, but one thing I would like to note is we are a shop of three people, and the previous use was, again, for a daycare or some sort of school, which clearly had more people and more use for the sewer. Our current average is about 39 gallons per day. We have a single toilet. We used to have 5 bathrooms in the building, but we have reduced that. So while I understand we need a letter from the sewer district, and I haven't gotten a response from them yet, I feel we are very comfortably within the limitations of the sewer. I believe there's also a comment about solid waste, and what we do for disposal of our waste. We use Pine Tree Waste Services. They supply us with 2 different dumpsters, one for trash, one for single sort recycling, which we mainly fill up with cardboard. And then for any scrap wood that we have, we fill our own dump trailer and bring it to the Freeport Town Recycling Station Center, and pay to dispose of it there.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other thoughts from the board? This is just a concept review, so provide comments.
I mean, really just from driving by over the years, the existing building's not that visible, and this addition's another 30 feet back from the front of that, so I don't know how much it'll be seen.
Right. Okay. Do I need to take public comment?
It's always good to give the opportunity if you
Okay.
want.
Would any members of the public like to speak on this application? No, that's a no. Okay. No other comments from the board? All right, thank you. See you next time. Right, the next item on our agenda is Wilbur's of Maine Outdoor Freezer Design Review Certificate. And I'll turn it over to Caroline for the summary.
So Andy Wilbur is here. Wilbur's of Maine has the bright orange, or pumpkin colored, I think it is, building on Lower Main Street, on the corner of Lower Main Street and Meeting House. They wanted to add an outdoor freezer, and then they also wanted to put a wall enclosure. Details are in the packet. It's going to be an 8-foot-high wall that will enclose it so it won't be visible. The materials, the siding and the trim and the colors will all match the existing building. This qualifies under a site feature for design review, and since it's visible from the right-of-way, it's here before you tonight. And Andy Wilbur, the applicant's here if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add?
Not really. It's a fairly straightforward process. We have a freezer on site that we want to move the location, and we have a wall that we use to obscure the 2 dumpsters. So the thought was to replicate that and obscuring the sight lines on the freezer as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? It's a silent bunch today.
I guess just on the leg perpendicular to the building, will that start after the heat pump, it would look like, based on the photo?
It's between the tree and the heat pump. So, and so the western edge of it would be pretty close to there's 2 buildings that there's kind of like an alleyway in between.
Yeah, yep.
So it will start, the freezer will start in line with that eastern building on the edge of the alleyway. And then it will go down 16 feet. So it will move, the end of it will probably line up with about the end of the heat pump.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this application? Okay. All right, would any member of the board like to make a motion?
I'll try this one, but I don't read the whole thing. Okay.
Go ahead, Linda.
I would like to make a motion to approve the design review certificate for Wilbur's of Maine as proposed. That makes sense.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
That's a lot faster.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is Linda Bean's Main Kitchen and Topside Tavern addition, site and building alterations. And Caroline is not here to give us a summary, but this applicant has been before us a couple of times already. And so I think what's being proposed now are additional modifications to that design, and I'll turn it over to the architect.
Working?
One of you great introductions.
Oh, did you want it? Did you want to do it?
Sure, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna keep it going, but all right.
No, you can keep
No, it's fine. Go ahead, Caroline.
So you know David quite well now. He likes to come on Wednesday nights. David has been before you a few times for addition to Linda Bean's Topside Tavern at 88 Main Street. In this case, they realized the design that they had wouldn't really work with the flat glass ceiling, so they had to make some alterations. You'll notice a little bit higher, a little bit sloped, material change, and then they also want to add some enclosed doors on the front so that they can get more use out of it and close the doors when cases of inclement weather. I'll let David kind of explain the changes to you, what they had before you. The interesting thing here is it doesn't affect the site plan, it doesn't affect the footprint, it only affects the second story facade. So it's strictly design review. Any conditions from the past approval are still applicable. They're still working out some like impervious area calculations and things like that. So this proposed motion notes that. Do you need some help with that, projector?
Well, I brought boards in case this doesn't work, because I never want to count on this, so I can't seem to get it working, so. I have boards that I can bring out. Grab the easel. Thank you, sorry about that. Again, my name's David Matero. Third time's a charm, hopefully. So we started this design project a year and a half ago. And in that time, obviously a lot of things have changed. The scope of the project is quite similar, but what's become apparently very important now is outdoor seating. And so we've expanded our outdoor seating as much as we can on this infill project. Our last presentation, our first floor ice cream window, walk-up window remains the same. Our balcony still extends out. That remains the same. But what's changed is when we presented before, we had a glass roof, or what we proposed was a glass roof to cover the outdoor seating. We had a very low slope, like very low. Structurally, that doesn't work. Also, a glass roof isn't such a good idea when you consider all the dirt, bird droppings, and everything else you have to clean off from it. So as we get into the engineering component of this, we have switched that to a polycarbonate roof called Calwall, which is a pretty common, it's a structural polycarbonate. It deflects light or directs light all over, so it makes the inside of the rooftop brighter. It doesn't show all the dirt and the grime, and it's structural, so it allows us to span this, the structure here. But the biggest difference in the design of that is it has to be in a 212 slope. So we're sloping the roof from the front of the facade to the back, where we can then discharge all the stormwater and snow. That raised the roof of our building, basically. So it lands on the roof of our addition in the back. And in the front of that, we added glass. So what you're looking at is a sloped polycarbonate roof, a glass around, and a beam that will then be able to handle a bifold door that we hope only is closed in inclement weather. So those are the major changes that we've made. What we're trying to show is this infill currently. As you know, if you get this ATM machine, we have a big gap in our sort of cityscape or townscape here. This transition now, it's tried to show this building, the Polo Ralph Lauren building, is much taller than our building. So basically, we're stepping down with a transition from our glass roof, our addition, to the Linda Bean restaurant. And we're trying to show in these drawings here that it is set back. So the Polo building is proud of the Linda Bean building. So as you're walking down, this is set back. Now you will see a glimpse of the roof overhead, but that's actually part of trying to draw people in. As you know, you have to create an experience. You have to create a safe environment, and we're trying to create that with sort of a newer building that will draw people into the restaurant, outdoor seating, so we can, capture our patrons all year round. So the biggest change is really this roof structure and the ability to close the kind of space with bifold doors. And that's why we're back for the third time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Yeah.
I'm trying to understand how this building relates to the sidewall of the Polo building. There's a little dormer there, and are there double windows? Is one of them going to get covered up by this?
Well, no, there's no windows on the side of the Ralph Lauren building. It's all clapboards, their sign, this dormer, here. So there's no windows here. There's a door that faces the street, but there's nothing on the side that would affect them. We do have to move the, I think there's a information board that will be obstructed by this. But there's nothing that we're affecting in terms of how Ralph Lauren operates, other than we're gonna block up their sign.
There's not glass on that second floor dormer on the sidewall?
No.
No, I think that's a sign. That's what I was,
There we go.
yeah, that's
okay.
why
Yes,
it.
I came to you, the second time we came to you was when we had to modify the design of our first floor plan to account for all the utilities that go between the buildings. So our second floor still does that cantilever, and we're only a foot or so from the Ralph Lauren building, but everything we're building is non-combustible. That's all been accepted by the code officer.
No, I was just, I'm a little uncomfortable with the height, but it's always been a funky void space there, and I think this is a case where the 3D is helpful, but it actually is sort of a weird
It
force
is,
perspective that
no,
doesn't.
no.
So I don't think you're going to notice it as much as it looks like you are on there.
Yeah. It is clearer on the model that we built, and if you're familiar at all with the second floor of the Linda Bean restaurant, it's a really low ceiling that can seat over 100 people. I mean, I think it's less than 9 feet tall. There's not a lot of space between that and the roof. So unfortunately, the original bank building, which was built as, has a really low second floor, and which makes it even squat. It's a pretty squat building. So it emphasizes how tall that is, but I think by having the Ralph Lauren building being so much larger, that actually gives us the ability to transition down, and I don't think it's going to feel nearly as tall in actuality.
And then the front glazing will be clear up high, and then the cowl wall will kind of diffuse so it'll be a pretty light
Yeah.
structure. You're not looking
Right.
into a hole.
That is the intent, and the intent originally was to have just a clear glass roof, but that was,
So the doors are new, correct?
the doors are new.
So will this be, when the doors are closed, will this be heated?
There's going to be some, on the sides, there's a gas fireplace built into the wall, and there might be some temporary heaters, but as long as there's no permanent heat, then we don't have to insulate that space for the new energy code. So the plan is not to heat it, but to temper it, so we could eat there in the wintertime.
So what's the purpose of the doors?
Oh, driving rainstorm, 0-degree weather.
But if it's 0-degree weather, you're not going to be seating anybody in there.
But I think the plan is to do that with a gas fireplace and some temporary heat. Those. I mean, it's pretty common in Europe even in Norway, to be eating outside. They provide wool blankets and infrared heaters. So if we can provide just enough to temper that's the goal, right? I don't know if it's going to be 0 degrees if they're going to eat out there, but that is the goal.
But it seems if the doors are closed, it should be considered indoor seating.
I don't know if indoor seating affects. It doesn't. We've accounted for all the seating in terms of our parking requirements. I'm not. What our goal was to not have to insulate it for the energy code. So in terms of whether it's considered indoor seating or outdoor seating, I don't know if that affects anything in terms of what the design review board needs to review.
It seems like it would, or it could. I don't know. I mean,
Well, if it's indoor seating, then, okay, yeah, you can
I
decide.
mean,
whether-
if you're going to be seating people and the doors are closed, to me, not being expert, that's indoor seating.
Okay. well, I guess we can call it indoor seating. We still have the outdoor seating across the balcony, and then when those doors are closed, beyond that is the restaurant.
I don't know, what's,
I think the only impact would really more be a fire code or energy code issue. than
Right, I
a-
don't think that's something that we really can review.
Yeah, it's still part of the restaurant, whether it's indoor or outdoor. Could create building code issues, but I think that's how he's designed it by working with Nick. So
Well-
what's the concern that here?
well, if the doors are closed and they're seating people inside, then that is an indoor seating area, and it should, I would think that it should comply with indoor seating.
You mean as far as building codes?
Yeah.
So I think, I get your point. I think if that were the case, when they get to the point of applying for building permits, if Nick said the code applied that way, and it got interpreted that way, and they didn't meet it, they'd have to come back to you to modify their plans.
Well, we do have a means of egress from inside that space. When those doors are closed, that does not count as an emergency egress because it isn't open in the direction of travel. So if you look at the floor plan, there's an exit from inside this space that goes into the staircase and goes down. So in terms of the code review compliancy, we meet that. There's also an additional bathroom that's available for the extra people that we're seating in the restaurant, as well as our parking analysis was done to account for the extra seating for the restaurant.
Yeah, one of their conditions of the past approval, because parking goes off the inside, when they come in to get permits, we'll have to finalize their parking calculations. So we'll have to look at how the ordinance defines that. And if they can potentially use this 365 days a year because they can close that, then they're going to have to meet the full parking requirement.
So
up
I would
there.
ask then that the codes officer take another look at this with respect to whether it's indoor or outdoor, because it sounds like it's installation, it's potential code, fire code, and it's potential parking. Depending on if it's going to be used year-round indoor, then, if it walks like a duck.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I guess whatever the interpretation that was, it would, if he had to insulate the space, it would be in the walls that potentially wouldn't make any difference to the design, the aesthetic
The
design
design
that we're
would stay
looking
the
at.
same. The masonry wall, we just have insulation inside. The cow wall's already insulated. The doors are already insulated. It makes for more difficult transitions between our interior envelope of the restaurant and this. So we're getting into the weeds here in terms of that kind of insulation. Calling it interior space, and in terms of what we're dealing with today, is fine. And if we have to increase our parking, we'll have to work it out with the owner in the town.
I guess this goes back to the previous discussion with the Desert Remain, is reviewing plans, and I think we also need to consider how the space will be used, or how these facilities are going to be used in the approval process, because you can't separate the two. If it were indoor space, would it also affect the glass on top, the roof?
No. This is all insulated storefront up here.
Okay.
Cow wall's insulated. This beam is not. I mean, if we had to make it insulated space, would modify it's wrapped, would just be. The reason there's a lot of steel to make this work. It's already a challenge separately for steel to separate from our interior and exterior space in our restaurant component. So this is just another challenge that we're trying to get away from, which is why we've recommended no permanent heat in that space.
When
But
you,
in terms of design, it remains the same. I just want to make that clear.
in the prior approval that we did, there was discussion about parking spaces, because that's what had to have been looked at. Was there, wasn't there an excess of space at the time that you calculated?
The excess of space I think we've utilized now with this addition of the restaurant. So I think there was 7, sort of grandfathered in from 10 years ago when we did the original restaurant design. And I think we've used those up with the extra seating we've accounted for in this addition.
Yeah, the parking standards go off for a big part of it, interior dimensions, and there's certain areas that are exempt. So you guys look at the outside and you look at the general square footage, but at the end of the day, internally, they may have a hallway or stairway that's exempt. So we found it doesn't make sense to calculate it now because their interior design's not finalized, and then it's not always right. So we do it once they have their final design and come in for the building permit. If they don't have parking in their possession, they can buy a lot or build a lot and come to you through that, or they can get it through the leased parking pool. So in this case, it will need to be worked out, and per the past approvals, they're only before you tonight for design review for that second-story facade appearance, but per the past approval, that parking still needs to be resolved, and I think Todd's right, we're gonna have to carefully look at realistically how that's being used and how it ties into that parking calculation.
But I guess whether it's used 9 months a year or 12 months a year, it's going to require the same amount of spaces. And if we're just approving design review, then if the codes enforcement officer rules something else that has to change their design, then if we approve it tonight, they'll come back if Nick doesn't approve.
Regardless of a condition that you guys put on, Nick's gonna have to look at it for the current building code in effect at the time the applicant comes in, when the building code's just changed as to the energy code. So if he doesn't meet it, Nick's not gonna be able to issue the permit, and if he has to modify it, it's design review. So I can't approve it, he's gonna have no choice but to come back.
So if we wanted to make a motion, we would not need to amend the draft motion.
Again, you're just doing design review. I mean, Nick's gonna have to look at it for code regardless. I think it was a good point that, they are kind of changing that use not changing the use in terms of like the zone, it's one thing from another. It's still a restaurant, but that one aspect of the space, by adding the door enclosures and the heat source, they are essentially changing it, which could not only impact parking, but ultimately could potentially impact the design, which I think was Todd's point and concern. But it will be caught either way during the code review.
Well, I know where the town office is now, so 4 times.
So our review, I guess, what does our review do then? Our approval of this?
You're reviewing the application for the design review standards, the design review ordinance, the 10 standards, the scale, the materials, the compatibility,
Okay.
the site features. You've already approved the use, and you've already approved the footprint, square footage, and all the other things that go along with that.
Well, we approved the use that would be considered outdoors. Did we approve the use that it would be indoors? Does it make a difference?
It
Is there
doesn't make a
differentiation?
difference for the use. Only thing
Okay.
it makes a difference for is, you're right, it could make a difference for code, but the parking's really gonna be the
The
big
occupancy
thing.
classification's the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
We get more impacts, the codes in the next step, than it does what's before you,
Okay,
in this case.
okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No.
Okay. Do any members of the public have comments on this application? Okay. I will entertain a motion.
I propose that we approve the motion as written and read in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
May I add just a quickie comment? Number 3 of this motion says that final parking requirements will need to be determined, so it's already going to be in the works.
Yeah, the parking, right, exactly.
They can't get a certificate of occupancy, anybody, until they show that they meet the parking. And parking's a big deal, so,
Freeport loves parking.
And egress and energy.
yep.
Right.
Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight is Nighthawk's Kitchen Design Review Certificate. And I will turn it over to Caroline for a summary.
So this applicant's also been before you. You've seen Katie on Zoom. I don't think she's been here in person, but she is our contact for the Freeport Crossing, also known as the Shaw's Plaza, home of Mass Landing Brewery, and soon to be Nighthawk Kitchen. So when they came in for site plan review, you might remember that they got approval not only for the artisan food and beverage for the brewery, but there was a small area, I think it's like 1,000 square feet for a restaurant. So now they have Nighthawk Kitchen that wants to go in. They wanted to do new signage, but we couldn't ever find that there were signs where they wanted to put them, so therefore they were new signs, therefore they had to come before the project review board. They also have this little kind of bump out of outdoor seating, and they do want to add some outdoor seating in that existing concrete. Visibility is limited, but since they were coming to you, it really made sense to include everything at one time. So they'll have a little bit of outdoor seating on the side facing a parking lot. They've also done, you might have noticed, they did do a little bit of parking restriping to make their ADA parking closest to the restaurant conform. And so they'll make sure that this area is also ADA accessible. The applicant's here if you have any questions for them.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add? Okay. All right, yeah, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board on this application?
I guess just for the outdoor seating on the plan, it's more next to, and the photo is just right in front of, so that's just existing concrete that's already there.
Yeah, today there's a little mailbox for the USPS. We're gonna work with the post office, if you guys approve, to relocate that, so it's just the existing concrete area next to the restaurant.
Any other questions or comments?
This is not contiguous with the Mass Landing outdoor area, it's,
This is correct. This is a separate outdoor area just for Nighthawks.
so there's a picture here that shows Mass Landing Brewing with seating in front, that's not
what this is for. That was separately reviewed and approved. The two operations do work together to serve in both. Serve out there. There will not be Mass Landing beer served in this outdoor area. And there was also the dumpster enclosure.
Oh, yes, I think you talked about that before. They do have a dumpster enclosure in here. They have a cut sheet of the fence.
So we got the physical location approved before, and we said we'd come back when we wanted to install the enclosure. We're still not quite ready to install it, but we wanted to get it approved. Once Nighthawk is open and operating, that's when we'll need that additional area.
And is that where the 4 dumpsters, because you're on the
Correct.
arc, okay, that's good.
Yeah, today they're kind of tucked in. Mass Landing is using the ones tucked in near the building, but once Nighthawk opens, there'll be a lot more trash in a positive way, so we'll need that.
And so the picture, obviously, just be a lot bigger, but
Yes.
same construction, yeah.
Correct.
once they open, there won't be the food truck.
Not at this time, but we have the right to use the food truck. They just have to come back in for a different permit.
Any other questions or comments? Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this application? There are none.
Like a motion?
I would entertain a motion, thank you.
I'd move the motion as written in the draft, and I note that it does include the dumpster provision for WS Freeport Properties.
Seconded?
All right, thank you. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, who seconded that?
Adam did.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, the next item on our agenda is Foiled Hair Salon, change of use and design review certificate. And I will turn it over to Caroline.
Sure, so this application, you don't always see a lot of change of uses in the village because a lot of times they're coming in, and although they're changing the use, they're not physically changing anything on the site. And they're doing some signage which could have been done under staff approval, but since they're coming, we might as well show you the whole package. So in this case, with workloads, vacation, and board agendas, we couldn't get them to staff review board quicker. It would have taken them longer. So we like to get them the quickest way possible because usually they want to get in and open. So that's why this change of use is before you tonight. Again, they're not making any site changes. There's some parking on site. Before they open, we'll do the final updated parking calculation if needed. Once we see their interior layout, they'll have to prove that parking is being provided either on-site or through the leased parking pool for all the uses. And there were some details on that in your packet. No exterior building modifications. They're going to do replacement signage. That's included in the submission. There's dumpsters on site, which they can use for their solid waste. Anytime they change a use, we need to see proof from the sewer district that they have the capacity to serve. As previously noted, I think they're on vacation. So that's a condition of approval that should need to submit that as part of the permitting process. But the applicant is here tonight, as well as the property owner, if you have any questions for them.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to add?
I think you covered most of it.
Okay,
If you have any questions,
Okay.
Jane and Bob is here too, and he's the owner of the property.
thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? No? Pretty straightforward. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this application? Okay. I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the application for, where are we? Change of use and design review for the foiled, I don't know what, hold on. I just got to see what the actual name is. Foiled hair salon, as noted.
Before you vote, I think I put 2 L's. There's 1 L, right? Yeah. Okay, we just want to correct the spelling of Gabriella.
Okay. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I think Ford beat you to it, Todd. Okay. All right, all in favor? All right, thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you. The next item on our agenda tonight is the Denny Block extension of approved building plans for 56 Main Street. And I'll turn it over to Caroline.
So you might remember pre-pandemic, Al was here for an infill building on Main Street. He worked quite a while on the project through contract zoning with the planning board, project review board, and council. Then they came in for demolition of a portion of a Class B building. They did the 4-month notice period. Then he got his site plan approvals, design review approvals, was working on everything, and then we had a pandemic. So they have not yet built the building, but they did go through all that. So they're here to seek approval of an extension. They're doing that within the time guidelines, so their current approvals are still valid for about another month or so. So they're here before you. The interesting thing when I looked at this, which I didn't realize until this was before us tonight, is design review only allows you to give a 1-year extension, but site plan review allows you to give a 2-year extension. So that's all the ordinance allows, so that's how it's set up. You know, the important thing here is have any standards change that would impact the application. In this case, it's no. So it's would still be found to meet it, so it's really just a strict extension. You know, any conditions from the past 2 approvals would still be valid. That's noted here. The extension dates are specifically called out in the motion, so that design review would give them another year from the date of expiration. Site plan, or there's 2 of them actually, and then site plan would give them 2 years. And Al and Alex are here if you have questions.
Thank you. Not sure if you have anything to add.
Gentlemen, I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
This was a fortunate casualty of the pandemic, and we hope to get that construction back on track within these prescribed timeframes.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board on the extension?
Just a more of an administrative question. How many times can proposers come to, applicants come to get an extension?
That's a really good question. The way I look at design review, it sounds like they can only get that 1-year extension. Subdivision and site plan, I have seen it done, I think, to about 3 times. It's really gonna be if the standards change. We had one project that came in for an extension, but they did actually have to modify it because the standard changed. So I think there's no limit. It's going to depend on the standards. I know there's a lot of interest in the downtown, and we're doing all this visioning work, so it wouldn't surprise me if the town considers changing some standards. So, it could be possible that it could help them or change their project. So if they were to come back, at least for the site plan in 2 years, would have to look at it, or even design review, the standards could change in a year. But this gives them a little bit more time to figure out if what they want to make work for them.
Well, because it seems like there are a lot of things potentially changing downtown, and I think it's, I'm guessing that the economic environment has also continued to change as well since it was originally approved, so.
And if they were to come back, it'll have to be looked at for the standards in place at that time. They don't get any, grandfathering of the approval per se in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Do any members of the public, I don't think we have any, do we? Any members of the public wish to comment on the application? No? Okay, moving on. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move the proposed motion as written, and, for the Denny Block extension.
Okay, is there a second?
Seconded.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
I'm going to abstain. I don't even know where this is.
Okay. All right. 4. Okay. Did you get that, Sharon?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, yep. The next item on our agenda is Good Fire Brewing and Mr. Tuna change of use and site plan amendment. And I do need to disclose that the applicant is lives in my neighborhood, and we did discuss him purchasing the building in December, but I have not talked about the project, and the first time I saw the plans was when we all received them last week. So if there are no objections, I will not recuse myself from this application. Okay. And I'll turn over to Caroline.
Sure. So if you guys were going to try a computer, you're more than welcome to try to connect it to the HDMI cord. So Good Fire Brewing and Mr. Tuner are looking at a change of use. This was the old Conundrum El Jefe Old World Gourmet building on the corner of South Freeport Road and US Route 1. So part of the building was used for a restaurant, and that's where Mr. Tuna is going to go. The other half was also used for a restaurant, but now they're changing to artisan food and beverage, which is a permitted use down there. So they are proposing some site modifications here. This property, as it exists today, has some unique access from US Route 1. There's cross easements. It's really like a big dirt area in some portions. There's a diagonal property line between the big statue and the 2 buildings. The applicant would like to close off the entrance on the Route 1 facade and around the northerly side of the building, so that access to the site is off of South Freeport Road to the rear parking, which will be the primary parking for the site. They have reached out to the town, and they have reached out to DOT. We have to get a little clarification as to who the actual entrance permit for the modifications would have to come from, whether town or DOT. But they've reached out to both parties, and so far there is no objection. Relating to access, the town engineer did say that he would want some more information, looking at the site distance there, and then providing some information on traffic, and what they're expecting for traffic capacity. This is Route 1 South. The requirement down there is that they submit a parking analysis, so that's something they would need to include with their final submission to show they have enough parking. They're also going to need to show that they meet the requirements for ADA parking. They do, although they are taking up a lot of impervious area they are going to add a lot of pervious area, they still need to treat the new impervious areas. They have had preliminary discussions with Adam Bliss, the town engineer, and they've been working on stormwater management and erosion control plans, which you'll see when they come back. Still need a capacity letter from the sewer district that will be forthcoming. Final submission will need to include, basic signage and lighting. You had some building renderings in the packet. They're prepared to kind of walk you through tonight the extent of the changes that they're proposing. Again, this is in the commercial district, so section 527 is applicable. So you'll need to consider that with the proposal in regards to landscaping, building design, any signage when they show you that. The landscape buffers is another requirement down there. One thing that I didn't see in the submission, but since they're changing the use and site features, they'll need to demonstrate how they're meeting that pedestrian connection requirement with the abutting properties. Again, it's kind of a unique property line there, the way they kind of blend together. But that's something they can address. And the applicant and their team are here tonight if you guys have questions for them.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Hi. So I'm meeting all of you, I guess, for the first time. I'm a new Freeport resident myself, so thanks to all of you for being here. That's what I look like. So thank you very much for your time. I'll kind of just provide a quick intro, just talk about myself a little bit and my business and Mr. Tuna, AKA Jordan Rubin. And then I'll kind of turn it over to the team members, and each of them sort of has a more specific aspect of the plan that they can kind of comment on. So we're really hoping to answer any and all of your questions and hopefully turn this around quickly so we can restore this, re-illuminate this, iconic spot for Freeport. So I'm David Redding. My wife and I are Freeport parents. We met in medical school back in Biddeford, and we stormed through the meeting, so I can do this, right? Is that okay? All right. We met in medical school in Biddeford, and we pretty much did all of our adult activities here in Maine. We bought our first house in South Portland. We got married on Cow Island. I started homebrewing as a nephrology fellow at Maine Med and turned that into a business, which we started in 2017. That's Good Fire Brewing Company. We still have our production brewery and tasting room down in Portland on the East End. But as we moved up to Freeport and saw the exciting enthusiasm and changes that are happening, I think all the way up Route 1 north of Portland, it seemed like a very fitting opportunity for us to maybe expand our businesses and bring some of our success here to the community that we're enjoying so much. And then I'll just comment that quickly, Jordan and his fiance Marissa just closed on a property, so they're going to become Freeport residents as well. So the two partners were really invested in the community wholeheartedly. So essentially what we're looking to do, I think Caroline really summarized it best. In terms of nuts and bolts, we're transferring one business from the El Jefe Conundrum Restaurant to Mr. Tuna. We're adding a new use, which is the artisanal food and beverage, and we've purchased a small pilot system that will sort of describe the footprint of in a little bit. And then our basic plan is to, like I said, re-illuminate this amazing spot and provide site modifications that bring it up to ADA standards, that make it hopefully safer, and also add some stormwater management that will be good to protect what we're aware of as a threatened wetland behind the property. So that's fully in our consciousness. So I think I'll turn it over to the team. Do you guys need a second to hook up the computer, or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's right up here. Is this the fastest meeting you guys have ever done?
No, it's not. But
I'm starting to sweat.
right, there were certainly a lot of applications, but nothing too complicated, it seems.
I did have to call a representative because you were going so fast. I guessed wrong.
Oops.
Okay, Hey, if you do your homework and you're efficient, then that's fine.
That's right.
I'm Tyler Holmquist. I work for Michael Boucher Landscape Architecture here locally in Freeport, between here and the Good Fire site. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the site improvements directly adjacent to the building, and then sort of turn it over to the civil engineers to talk more specifically about the parking lot. So here is just an existing conditions plan with a kind of Google Earth image of the existing site laid on it with a bold property line and the setback line in black. Let's skip to the next one. So this is sort of showing the extent of, updates to the site. It's really not, kind of go back and forth between the two slides. There's not a whole lot of difference between what's currently in parking and what we're proposing here. Can go back to now to the third slide. So just to kind of start on one side of the building and work our way around, we have and I'll get closer so I can point to things directly, but we have a new proposed concrete walk in the front that sort of unifies the now entries, and as was mentioned before, we're closing down the Route 1 access. So here we have a concrete walk that unifies both the Mr. Tuna entry, the Good Fire Tasting Room entry on the bottom, as well as the service walkways in the back there. Working our way around, we have some bicycle storage that will be bike racks on some type of pavement pad. We haven't specified materials in that area yet. And what you can see sort of around the building in these rectilinear shapes are the outdoor kind of drinking and eating space of Good Fire. And these on the Good Fire side all land within the setback line, and they are bound by a fence. And this is right now the thinking is a wood fence that matches the architecture, the wood facade additions to the architecture. We'll see in a little bit. The one ask that we do have is on the Mr. Tuna side. You'll see that the outdoor seating extends to the property line into the setback, and this is sort of an ask of the board, and the reason being is it's currently that paved area out front, and there's also egress doors that exit right into that setback area. And without being able to go over that line, it'd be harder to provide outdoor seating for that business on that side. In the center here, it's worth noting that this is the sort of area to go in, and there's a shared bathroom here, so that's a kind of central space for that. And as mentioned before, it's a pretty odd property line, just the way that it cuts across. And so, our thought was to close down that entry to Route 1 and have less of a conflict between the neighboring properties and kind of a dangerous intersection there. This entry more or less is where it exists now. It's actually, we're proposing to maybe define it and narrow it up slightly, but still within all the standards. The materials for the outdoor seating area are ADA compliant stone dust, so that's sort of the thinking right now. And then, as I mentioned before, this walk that almost everyone is a cast-in place concrete. Okay, I can go to the next one now. So planting, currently on site, there's a few invasive species that we're proposing to eliminate. There's the Norway maples that are in the existing wood planters out in the parking lot. Replacing those with some pin oaks. I noticed some of those in the parking lot as I walked in and in the entry. So all of the plants that we're proposing are native and will do well with the climate and lower maintenance. So there's some ground cover in this island here below the pin oaks, and that's hay-scented fern. plethora, pepper bush, just some, kind of nice medium height ground cover in there. And then some buffering between the neighboring property with some bayberry and then some red maples at the top. And then in the back, to provide some sort of shade in between the two, the Mr. Tuna side and the Good Fire side, there's a honey locust, and to kind of shade the sunny side of the building here, there's red oak. You'll see on this plan too, we're proposing some light locations, and on the fence posts, and these black dots, it's hard to see at this scale, but those will be every other fence post, and the thinking there is these are a low voltage fence post light that would just face down and give some sort of safety illumination to the outdoor spaces. There's a photo of an example here. As far as the fence material, again, it's we kind of took the detail from the architects of the new facade on the building, lightened the density up a little bit so it's a little more transparent, and the height of that is only 3 feet tall, so you can see from the surrounding Route 1 and South Freeport Road. You can kind of look in and see what the activity is going on in there. This is just a quick detail of the 2 entry signs, so the main entrance sign here, and then another one on sort of the Route 1, and those will conform to town standards, and sort of the materials and color to be determined at this point. You can go to the views now to get a better idea. So this is as you drive in, looking to the left and seeing the Good Fire Brewing outdoor seating area. You can see a little bit here the architectural facade that we're sort of modeling this fence after, so it all sort of matches. This is the bike rack area. Go to the next one, please. Again, this is looking at the Mr. Tuna entry, and this is a better look at that architectural kind of wood facade that we're modeling the fence after as well. Sort of a view looking at the 2 main entrances at this point, and this obelisk in the back is just a representation of the big Indian there. So
Very neutral.
purposely keeping a little vague. So just another tilted view there. Can go through these. This is looking back at the Mr. Tuna outdoor seating area, and again, this line that you see here is essentially we're replacing the paving on our side of the property line with this loam seed here, and this is the fence that does encroach into the setback, but is within the property line, and that's the ask that I was discussing before. And this is the final view, sort of kind of an overlook at both of the outdoor seating areas. Again, as we all know, we're wearing masks, so nice to provide outdoor seating areas for people to get out during the summer, and fall. That's it for me. I can turn it over to Sybil for the parking lot.
Great, thank you, Tyler. My name is Samuel Bell with Acorn Engineering. We're the civil engineer on the project. Really happy and excited to be here tonight. 2 great companies. Really looking to breathe life back into this site. It's really kind of a gateway to Freeport from the south. So this is a really cool project. And as you've seen, there has been some pretty good thought put into this, even though we are, this submission was kind of concept sketch. Since that time, we've really started to take it to the next level, put some real thought and detail into it, and a lot of that is reflected tonight, so we can make this as constructive as possible. So, most notably, it's been touched upon, but closing that Route 1 curb cut, we really saw that as a big advantage for the site. Not only is it going to keep cars off of Route 1 and backing up, but it's just going to enhance that facade and really just make it more pleasing from that view from Route 1, in addition to the traffic benefits. So all traffic will be routed off South Freeport Road. We'll be using the existing curb cut and driveway to really formalize that parking area. The landscape island, we are kind of pushing that back to accommodate a really efficient layout, trying to be as efficient with impervious area as we can. The landscape island will enlarge in, and as Tyler said, getting rid of the invasives and getting some native shade trees in there. The traffic flow will be very simple. It's kind of a loop. A fire truck can get around. That's all been incorporated into our site design. From a traffic perspective and trip generation, I mean, these are very similar uses to what, Jefe and Conundrum had before. So there's really not going to be a lot of change in what those peak hour demands are. From a stormwater perspective, Dave mentioned the threatened, so it's actually, we're in a threatened watershed, Thatcher Brook, and so we have been very sensitive to impervious area and stormwater. Even though the pavement or the parking area is slightly enlarging, that impervious area is basically being offset by what we're doing in front of the building. So in, the net impervious area, when you compare existing to proposed, is about a wash. However, we are exploring trying to get a stormwater BMP to at least treat a portion of the runoff before it enters the watershed again. So really taking, not only aesthetic improvements, but technical improvements that aren't as easy to see. Again, in the back, the generous sidewalk really kind of ties everything together. We'll be strategic with the wayfinding and getting people to their destination, whether it's Good Fire or Mr. Tuna. That's all about I have for the civil, and I'll let Ryan round out on the building design.
Good evening, Ryan Senator with RSA, architect out of Portland. As well, we're very excited about this project and kind of breathing some new life into this building. As Tyler had mentioned, there's not a lot of exterior changes. We're kind of cleaning up the exterior facades of the building, adding some new glazing to kind of create a better connection from interior spaces to the exterior patio, which we think will be nice. One of the biggest things we're doing is improving handicap accessibility. We think that's really important. The two main entries will be made handicap accessible. There's currently a step at those entries. And then we do have a shared bathroom core that the two entities will use. And again, that'll be made up to current codes, accessible access throughout. So those are kind of the major interior improvements we're making. We've worked with the landscape architects to make sure the building improvements kind of are cohesive with the site improvements. We have the wood slat details kind of wrapping the outdoor patio space as you saw. So that'll be the same, very, very similar wood detail. And we're also wrapping that the entry to the Good Fire side as well with that kind of slat cladding, the wood slat cladding detail. Go ahead. These are just some of the technical elevation drawings. We are proposing some new cutoff downlight fixtures, wall packs. So that'll be, dark night sky, full cutoff, but mainly for safety and illuminating entries. So those are indicated on the facades. As well as some cutoff sign downlights. So we're proposing a couple of signs on the front of the building. And as you can see in the upper elevation, the wood slats kind of cladding that existing patio area, which has kind of like a pretty worn up kind of stockade fence around it now. We'll be taking that down and providing a new fresh appearance there. And so I don't know if that's our last elevation we have, but yeah, that kind of summarizes the exterior and interior improvements. So thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board?
I have a question.
Start on one end, I think. Yeah.
Is there a buffering requirement on Route 1 to have a certain amount of buffering from off Route 1?
Yeah, I can read the buffer requirement for the commercial districts. For all uses subject to site plan review in the front setback, a strip extending along the entire frontage of US Route 1 except for driveways for a depth of 15 feet, landscaping is required. Landscaping is also required in all side setbacks for a depth of 15 feet extending from the front property line to the furthest back edge of the developed area, which means building, parking lots, or impervious surfaces. The board shall determine whether the side landscaping shall consist of plantings and/or retention of natural cover. Only accessway, walkways, pedestrian and vehicular connectors between parking lots on abutting lots and common driveways for abutting lots are permitted in the side landscape setbacks.
So what I'm seeing, if I'm correct, there is no proposed planting buffer from Route 1 side now?
They show it as grass.
A grass?
They show it as grass. And so the area that they noted to you is that they don't meet that standard in that side landscape setback. I'm not sure if that's something you actually even have the legal ability to waive. If that's something the board is even interested in entertaining, we would need to get legal guidance. If it's something you could waive, then that's one thing, and if you can't, you can't.
This is just on the Route 1 side, right?
Nope, front and side,
Well, so-
15 feet. So pretty much everything they show you from all around extending to that back parking area, they're gonna have to landscape.
So what, this is section 409?
That is under, yes, 409, other standards, number 2.
So how about C5, we can reduce the side,
Yeah, I saw that. You can, it kind of conflicts with itself if you read. I was hoping you wouldn't ask. It doesn't read good. So number 2, I just read you the 15 feet, but then under number 5 for building, you can reduce the setback to a minimum of 5 feet if the proposed building, which we're not talking about a building here, but is adjacent to an existing building being used for commercial purposes, if a lot shares access, parking, and/or other facilities with another lot, or if environmental constraints on the property limit the logical location of buildings to be closer to the property line.
what you just said is different than what I'm reading. I've got a draft from March of 2019 that doesn't have the 5-foot limit, it just says you can reduce the setback.
Because that amendment was added in March of 2019.
So if we can, does your drawing, where you have the outdoor seating, obviously you're asking for a reduction in the setback. Does that contemplate going down to 5 feet or to 0? Do I understand this correctly, Caroline?
But is it part of the building, or is it just outdoor seating on ground?
Just outdoor seating, so it's just the compacted stone dust surrounded by the fence. So it's not the building. And the building actually currently is in the setback, and the property line hits it and goes around that corner in that area. But what we're asking for is it's just the outdoor seating, additional outdoor seating. And again, that's replacing existing asphalt.
Sorry, when you guys are responding to our questions or comments, please step up to the microphone. Thank you.
Should I say it again, or?
You're fine.
Okay.
We'll move on.
I may be linking two things inappropriately here. They're supposed to have landscaping for 15 feet on a sideline.
Mhm.
But they've got seating instead of landscaping. But if we can reduce the setback to 5 feet, it would reduce the landscape requirement to 5 feet, right?
For a building, correct. Yes. So I think the best thing to do here is if that's something you guys want to entertain, we should, we've talked a lot about waivers in the past, and there's a lot of stuff that you legally cannot waive, only the Board of Appeals can, or we can't waive at all. So I think if that's something you're interested in allowing, I think you need to indicate such, and we need to get some legal guidance before they come back as to whether or not. I know they're on a tight timeline here, so it could impact their plans, but they could always come back with what they have, and if we find out prior to them coming back that it's something you can't waive, you could do it conditionally, that they have to come back and tweak that corner.
This is just an informational meeting tonight anyway, right?
Yeah, it's just conceptual. They want to get feedback because they are hoping to come back to
Can you
next
just point to me what corner we're talking about?
The top.
Top.
The
The
top corner.
building, where the building touches the property line.
Yeah.
that whole.
That's just, yeah, where the
And I
seating
think what's-
touches.
what's
Outdoor
a little
seating,
complicated
yeah.
about the space as well is that this is existing building, which already goes over the property line, which the former owner of the building has, I believe, in terms of our due diligence, he came back before the board and was grandfathered in, is my understanding.
I'm not sure if he was grandfathered or if he got a variance, but that variance would only apply to what exists today and what was presented at that time.
Sure, and so I think the outdoor seating that he currently has, though, is actually pictured by this dotted line, and it goes to within 5 feet of the property line. So that's already existing outdoor seating. This is the existing property line, and so what we're proposing to add is actually from the dotted line out. It's been fun.
Have you my 2 cents worth is that's a very strange property line, and you're doing a nice thing with the property, and I think I'd be inclined to accommodate you to the extent that we can, and as I read it, it looks like we're gonna find we have some flexibility to vary that, but I'd be in favor of it, but it'd be nice to know that your next door neighbor doesn't have a problem with it.
And we have begun conversations with the next door neighbor, just preliminary introductions. Mostly we wanted to see what you had to say tonight before we sort of ventured down that path with them, but that's 100% the next step, yeah.
I mean, there's the legalities of it. I'd also be concerned in the design sense of what's the termination of that to now just asphalt, or if the neighbor, you come back next time and, he wants to do some more grass too, and it, is a little more cohesive. I think that obviously changed the way you terminate at your property line to either nothing into asphalt or.
We have a couple other rendering concepts that we created depending on how much they were willing to sort of work with us on that, but the idea is that we would likely be paying for landscaping to sort of improve both properties. I was right along what you're thinking, that's what we're gonna try to do.
So something similar along, like the I guess it goes northwest, southeast border of the building, the northeast corner of the building,
So the
northeast end. You would project it forward like you would think a property line should work.
So if you think if you can picture the Great American is right
Yes.
here, it would be this triangle wedge of land
Correct.
up to the Great American.
Correct. So it wouldn't look like somebody just
Exactly like
landscape part of the parking lot.
Right, that's what
and
right,
stuff.
exactly.
Yes, so it would be,
And I think also it's kind of hard to picture just because that you've sort of got that strange on-ramp that comes in here where you see people sort of getting off Route 1 kind of hot.
mhm.
If this is all sort of closed off and then they just have the entrance to their parking lot, it will sort of seem, I think, quite a bit more symmetrical with respect to the 2 businesses that are up front, their property, their businesses and ours. But again, that really depends on their goodwill, and hopefully they sort of see eye to eye with us and just generally improving the aesthetic overall.
I believe there's also, I'm not sure whose property, because it is such a weird property line, but I believe there's some like cross easement, access easement in this area that also need to consider.
What was that? I'm sorry.
I thought there was some kind of cross easement for access in this area, so that's something you guys would just want to make sure you look at.
Utilities easement here from their property, because that's where I believe the sewer and power comes in. Is that my understanding? Is that what you're thinking about? I can't think of anything.
A
else.
vehicular easement, I don't know if it was you to them or them to you or how it was, but I thought it was somewhere, or it could have been,
I believe it's our.
at least.
Do you mind going to the microphone if you wish to speak?
I believe that was to the power, yeah.
That was the cross easement that was terminated. There was a cross easement in the back that's been terminated.
The cross easement has been terminated.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I guess just coming around that corner, if that's Google's still correct, there's a split rail fence and a couple of signs and a yard arm and, I guess, is that gonna be all re-landscaped or are you keeping that?
So
Or?
the split rail fence is right about here, and it fell down on its own. I actually thought it was the neighbors, so I wasn't cleaning it up, and then I just called them Star, or called Vinny. That's ours. So we're gonna throw that away, and then that will be re-landscaped. Mostly, I believe that we're gonna use plantings and not fence.
And then coming around the Route 1 South Freeport Road corner?
Which side? This
The left corner, yeah, up to, yeah, keep going, yeah.
one.
Yep, and then to South Freeport Road. At least on here, it's showing there's fence and.
Oh, yes, there will be fence on that
Okay.
side, yeah, because this will be fenced in along here, but the fence that's presently there is, I think, on state or town property, and so it really, it just needs to be removed and landscaped. I don't think there's much else that we can do with that.
Just going back to that north property line, that's the whole weird area. I'd like to see that being addressed, with discussions with your neighbor. Because I think it would just, if we were just to say, yeah, this looks great, but not have that triangle addressed at all, and if it just stayed the same, I think it would look absolutely ridiculous as an entrance to Freeport, as you stated.
Yeah, I don't know how much control I have over that, honestly.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of people that own it together, and
Mhm.
like I said, we sort of trying to do our best to liaise with them, and but I feel like that would be completely out of my hands, and it would be hard to be held to that if it's not really under our control.
Todd, just to note, it's our understanding that not only this property, but the abutting property, they've both recently changed hands.
Oh.
So there's some new parties and new owners involved
so-
in both properties. The other property hasn't come forward for anything at this point, but I think both transactions are fairly recent. I'm
Okay.
not even sure if we reflected in the assessing database for the abutting one yet.
Apparently, it's a group of investors that include Mike Larrabee and Eric Doobie and Tim Cheney. I don't know if those names mean anything to you, but
Okay.
Is there a plan B in case you don't get a variance or approval for
oh, for Mr. Tuna's outdoor seating.
the outdoor seating? Yeah.
It would be detrimental to the overall flow, but I think if there was no option, we'd have to figure out where else we can put outdoor seating for Mr. Tuna, because I think having outdoor seating with the way that the pandemic climate has changed recently for restaurant owners, I think it's giving them a lot of pause and concern. So
Right.
outdoor seating is a way to sort of make sure that the things will move forward.
Couldn't it be kind of contingent on what their plans are?
Who's that?
Your neighbors? I mean, if they're planning on using some of that property, they may say, no way, we don't.
Or they want to come in next time and say, we want to put a fence with seating or something right up. I mean, yeah, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, the landscaping to the northeast looks like that could probably be successful, but the outdoors, like having those corners terminate at the property line with little triangles of landscaping right up to asphalt would be very strange.
I can speak to that.
Sure.
Yeah, so if that is the case, that we can't go all the way to the property line, we did have some options to stay further in. It's just difficult with how far the setback cuts back, and you can actually see the current egress door. I believe there's an overhead door in addition to this, but the current egress door is essentially on the setback. And so I know you mentioned before potentially having the ability to, if not going all the way to the property line, maybe there's some ability to go, not have the setback be as far for that outdoor seating area, and then we could just modify the shape based on that. I mean, clearly going to the property line would be the ideal scenario for the business, but there's certainly ways to modify that with, and however lenient is possible is, we can just modify it based on that.
I have a question, I don't know who I should be asking, but are the outdoor seatings of the two sections, are they mergeable, or you're keeping them separate from each other?
They're separate businesses.
So this is coming in as two separate business uses, or one approval?
So it's two separate uses with two separate businesses, but we're making sort of legal arrangements to be able to share the bathrooms and have those under the same licensing.
And so my thinking, which probably doesn't work then, is that all that outdoor seating, the planting that you have in the middle, the green middle, I mean, if the two places could kind of merge around, and then you were able to cut off that, L shape, Z-shaped outer thing for tuna.
Yeah, I think
So it
there-
didn't go encroach
Sure.
there, then maybe it could work better.
I think the reason that we're trying to keep it separate is because it's the entrance to the bathrooms, so the idea of dining in front of the entrance to the bathrooms is sort of suboptimal. I think that's why having this sort of be like a green area and then having this just open without seating provides an opportunity if there's, a line for the bathroom that, they're not waiting in sort of the weird atrium or, gives them a little bit of an opportunity to have some room.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking of methods to cut
Yeah.
back on that encroachment, yet still have people able to go out and do outdoor seating wherever they want to go.
So from my understanding, if we could get our neighbors to sort of kind of buy into this idea, you guys like this concept, it's just a question of, can we work with them to make something that appeals to everyone?
Well, I think there's two issues. One, legally, can we waive the requirement to do that, which I was going to ask Caroline that. And then two, if you were up to the property line like you show, but the neighbor had some landscaping for another, 10, 20 feet, whatever, and it all kind of worked together, I think in general, people are okay. I'm okay with that. But I guess, Caroline, how do we,
Yeah,
are we right within 409 or are we
It
somewhere?
sounds like some of you have interest in potentially allowing that if it's possible. So that's something I'll get legal guidance on to see if you can waive, but, you can't require anything on the abutting property. He has no right, title, or interest. You can only look at the property before you and hope that it all comes together on the other side. But, I think you've made some really good points and observations, and although you might, if you can waive it, you do set a precedent. So if you set a precedent for this person, and you can legally waive it to let a fence go to the property line, what if the neighbor comes in and they want to put a fence all down that red line? I mean, that could be a legitimate concern and make a unique situation, which I think was kind of Todd's point. But yes, if that's the indication of the board that there's interest in that, I will get that resolved for the next meeting. Like I said, the applicant's planning on submitting for next month. The deadline was today, but since they're here tonight, they have till tomorrow to get their stuff in. So I think they would most likely submit plans as shown tonight with that area until it's resolved. And then once we get some clarification, would figure out how that could be resolved, if it's something you could entertain or not. So I think I'll get clarification as to the two standards which somewhat conflict, and I don't know for number 5, it says it has to be part of the building. It says they have to have some like cross-connection access. So I feel like there's a few different things we need to get some guidance on to see what you can waive it potentially and how much.
So also as part of, maybe it's not legal, it's more just historical, like, this is obviously a completely non-conforming building and property, so when was that approved and what was it under when it was approved? Because I think we're setting a precedent that if you have a really weird property that is old and non-conforming, that yes, it might get waived, but if you're coming in with a greenfield site that, had no restrictions, we obviously wouldn't waive that.
So
As you might,
you want to, looking at it, we're going to assume that everything that they're showing us is legally non-conforming, but we all know that's not always the case.
Right.
So they might show stuff, they said they could see some documentation of a variance or some kind of approval, but, people put out outdoor seating and other things, all the time. So I think you have to look at it cautiously.
Well, sorry for it. I guess just even when this got subdivided and the building corner, obviously nobody would have, who knows? Who knows how this building got built and is where it is? So I guess some history there from either the town side or their, title search and research side.
I think you're doing great things with this property. Your plans are great, and your team's great, and I'd be inclined to try to help you if we can personally.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, getting the consent from the neighbor doesn't solve any of your problems, but it makes it a lot easier for us in practical terms to accommodate you with a waiver. And, waivers are made for unusual circumstances, and I wouldn't be struggling personally too much with this being a precedent, because this is a long-standing, complicated property.
But a precedent is a precedent, and
Yeah.
someone, you don't ever know who's going to come back and say, you did it here.
Yep.
So,
And my understanding is that my contact for the neighbors is not the majority owner, but is that Eric Doobie person, and I think he's a civil engineer in Yarmouth, so it should make the conversations about this flow a little bit, knowing that he's got sort of experience and background in that. But now that I have sort of your loose blessing over the concept, that is 100% the next step is to work with them as much as possible. And I hope that they're as excited about the changes that we're going to make as you guys are, so hopefully we can come up with something together.
Caroline, which I assume you're going to be requesting from a legal opinion, right? Is that the?
Yep, I'll get legal clarification from our town attorney.
If that can, I don't know how much you can push somebody to give you the result, but if they can come back fast enough and then give it to them prior to them having, like 2 days before they have to put in their next documents.
They have to put in tomorrow because the
Oh,
deadline was
all right.
today, but since you moved the meeting, it caused shuffling with some different things. So
But at least if they could see the legal clarification in advance of next month, then at least they'll have a chance to know whether they have to prepare more or not, or, or whatever.
So that I understand the question, because when I read that subsection, even when you read me the more current version, it sounds clear to me that we can, but there is a twist. Is the twist that you're seeing the landscaping? Do we have the right to waive the 15-foot landscaping requirement if we reduce the setback?
I think question one is, do you have the right to waive either of those standards? And then you have the second case of it's conflicting, but then I think number 5 is very specific that it pertains to the building. We're not talking about the building here, we're talking about outdoor seating. It also specifically references a lot with shared access parking in our other facilities, which I'm not sure that as they're making these improvements, they're trying to improve that situation. And so I believe they're eliminating all of those shared things. So I'm not sure if they're gonna meet the threshold for 5. So I think there's a couple things we'll get clarification on and see if and how you can best make it work with their request of the applicant.
Well, and then
Or do you want me to pass this down to you, the number 5?
Yeah, because
Okay, you need to look at 2 and 5, there you go.
well, but that's just in 409.
Yes.
So then we're going to be into 527, which also has buffering.
I guess my question, on this subsection 5, you don't need to meet all of them, you just need to meet one of them. Is that right?
I think there's some wiggle room for interpretation
But
there. Read it out loud.
You're saying that because you know you're right.
No, I said there might be some room for interpretation.
The side and rear setbacks may be reduced to a minimum of 5 feet if the proposed building is adjacent to an existing building used for commercial purposes. These are all ors as I read them. If a lot shares access, parking, or other facilities with a lot, or if environmental constraints of the property
Is
limit.
that your or its or?
Okay. I don't think we need to, I don't think you need check marks in all 4 of those boxes. I think one of them, but we'll find out. I guess I ought to get the current version of this stuff.
Yeah.
Caroline, may I ask a question? What would be helpful for me to gather from my neighbors? Like a letter or something that sort of talks about what we've discussed, or?
Well, what I hear the board saying is that if they can legally entertain some kind of change, I don't like to use the word waiver, it's a bad word in planning world. If they can entertain some kind of change to the standard in this area, that they would feel more comfortable entertaining that if they knew your neighbor was on board with the request. How you provide that information, I think, is up to you.
Okay, so there's not a standard.
No, like, we don't have have your neighbor sign this form or anything like that. People don't always want their neighbors to sign forms. But yeah, something from your neighbor, it sounds like, would be beneficial or make the board feel more comfortable with the request.
I guess just we're then into, and I'm either blind or, I thought there was a depth, the landscape setback is mentioned in 527, front landscape setback, but I don't see a distance.
Depth is in C1, 409.
So depth is from C1 409, okay. So if we can waive that or reduce it or whatever, then we're assuming that controls 527, so we can do it for that too.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why they added, in 2019, they added that number 5 to clarify the requirements, but it didn't really clarify, I think, as it was intended.
One, we did 527 around that time, but we didn't do 409, right? Somebody else wrote that? I don't recall.
Yes, I think that was something that came in from my predecessor, maybe when the car wash was bringing some language in
Okay.
for zoning.
Okay.
I'm not sure the origin or really the background or intent.
Okay. Well, I guess to keep moving along, I don't know that we're clear on that, but we're as close as we're gonna get.
I have some files, so I
Clear as
can,
mud.
research it.
Right. And then the other 527 is the pedestrian connection, which we always get to talk about, and I don't, the town or there's no crosswalk across the street to the hotel, there's no way to get to the Y. I mean, forcing them to build a sidewalk all the way to the next office building on what's essentially woods going that way doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I open to others' opinions, but I wouldn't feel that that would be need to be done. And they're directly connected to their neighbor that way, so they can walk right over.
If that's something that I should consider speaking with the neighbors about too, and maybe that's something that they would prefer actually. In talking to them, they may want to have a connection so that they can come over and have a drink or eat some food and not move their car. Maybe just for them.
And I guess the only other, well, two things on my mind. One is, I like what you're doing to close it off, and having been to those other businesses before, it wasn't intuitive at all. But if your address is still 117 Main and just trying to get people to go to the right place instead of blowing by it and U-turns and that kind of thing, so I don't know if you've thought about that. And then number two, just the facade, I think you'll easily meet section 527, but just we'll need more detail to confirm that. And then I guess the shipping containers out back, and that doesn't face Route. So is that, I don't know if we're even in.
The dumpster?
Or no, I thought there was the rectangle on the back there. Thought that was.
Bike rack?
Yeah, this
No,
is
that guy.
that thing.
supposed to be a dry storage shipping container that we were going to
Yeah, okay.
sort of paint in a cool way, just kind of give it like a modern look.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that one would be hard as far as like visibility from public right-of-ways, so I think that's where that one would probably tuck right back in there.
Yeah.
Is the dumpster what's in the top there in the square? Is that,
Yeah, that's the litter area, exactly.
is there an enclosure proposed for that?
I'm assuming we will, yes, 100%. We would never want both our brewery and our restaurant waste.
Yeah.
We'll use AgriCycle to, compost almost all of our food scrap and things like that.
Yeah, so like Adam was saying, it's like those kinds of details that we're gonna wanna see for the next round. So cut sheets of specific materials used for the fencing, for the lighting, the windows or doors that you're planning on installing, to know what those look like. I assume that they're gonna be matched in sort of style as what's existing. Is that what the plan is?
We're going to try to do the best that we can.
Okay.
Some of those
Yeah.
are pretty old, but we're working with Home Depot, so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think the more detail, the better. It really helps with 527, especially.
And we need to be headed that way anyway in terms of our contractor and permits, so to get the architect step on it.
Okay.
And with respect to signage, so the idea there is gonna be, you know, basically just have the signage, the sign here on the corner that's directing people to turn, and then the second sign here to turn. We're gonna downplay the signage on the front of the building just for that reason, so that people aren't trying to like enter from the front. And then each of these spots will have an awning with, you know, our graphics, so that once you get into the parking lot, it's pretty obvious that you're just sort of, you know, walking and it's Tuna or Good Fire. But yeah, that's certainly something that we've been thinking about. You know, you're gonna have to retrain a lot of people who are used to seeing the corner a certain way. I've heard that people used to like the front for the old world gourmet sandwiches. So, but seeing a few people pull in at like 60 miles an hour into that spot now, when I've been sitting in the front room, I understand why Adam brought it up to us at one of our preliminary meetings, because it makes sense.
When you talk about front, you're talking about the front of your new design or the front of the existing? Okay.
Any other?
I'm just gonna
Comments?
just
Yeah.
iterate. It's for me. It's the relationship on that corner with its surroundings, and so I hope you're successful and have good discussions.
If you know any of those guys, put in a good word for them.
There's ways that things can be done. So
Yeah, buy that triangle.
or swap or give them swap or something, because they might want something in the back.
A lot of sushi.
Yeah, there you go. Give them all the beer they want. Well, we'll hope that they see it as an overall improvement for both businesses, because that would be our goal, is to create something that benefits both. I'll do my best.
Thank you.
all, I
Yep.
really-
Any other questions or comments? No? Any members of the public that want to discuss this application? No? Okay. All right. Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
Almost took it down.
Okay. The next item on our agenda tonight is a discussion on the remote participation policy.
So, municipal meetings were never legally able to be held virtually until we hit a pandemic. And then we got to try it out with the governor's emergency orders. So after that all happened, there was a new law that went into effect that municipalities could, in certain cases, hold remote meetings, but they had to adopt a policy, and each board had to adopt a policy, have a formal public hearing before they could hold remote meetings. So what you have before you is a policy that was recently adopted by the town council. It's, my understanding is pretty much duplicates exactly what state law would allow. It was prepared by Maine Municipal Association. So basically, this language is written so that if a board member can physically not be here, you know, travel out of town for work, quarantine, you know, a legit reason, and they want to participate virtually, you would be able to do that. If you're allowed to participate virtually, we need to offer equal opportunity to the public to do the same. So the council adopted this policy that they intend to function that way unless there's like a technology issue where they physically can't. This won't really pertain to you guys that often, but the town is working on making it so that this room would allow for a hybrid meeting. So they could, you'll have somebody on the screen, you'll have a computer, you'll have people here. My understanding is that one of the differences is like when we were doing it all virtual, you couldn't see the public. But in this case, you know, if Guy's at home as a public, he would be on screen, you'll be able to see them. It's not designed for you to sit at home and do a meeting because you don't feel like coming in or because it's controversial and you don't want to be in the room with the angry public. It's really designed to make it efficient, transparent, and to help us keep going in, you know, circumstances. So if you guys don't want to do this, you don't have to. it's an option for you, would have to put it on as a formal public hearing. I'd have to run a notice and you'd have to vote on it at a subsequent meeting. You know, I think from my perspective, Zoom's been good. We've got a new audience and we've got new participation. We have people that also like to come comment. So if you can combine the best of both worlds and it works efficiently, then I think that's great. I know there's a couple homebound people that watch you guys religiously that can't be here at night. They were able to participate at Zoom while they were taking care of their family, and they can't do that now. So it's not my decision, though. It's your decision, what you guys want to do.
Council's accepted it, right, for their own
The
use?
council is doing it for years. They have not had a hybrid meeting yet. Not sure if they're going to be able to pull it off starting this month, but.
So I guess what I'm unclear on in their policy is that a hybrid meeting policy, or is it a meeting policy when one of the members can't be there, then it could go hybrid, and then you'd have to provide the public? Because that's kind of what it says to me.
Yeah, they're doing a hybrid meeting, so every meeting they'll offer this opportunity. So the intent is that the board will be here, but the public, if they can't be here, they could be on. Their intent is to offer it at every meeting.
Or proposers, applicants, or their consultants could also be remote as well.
Yes, I think legally, the applicant or the presenter could be remote. The real huge change is that this would allow you guys to also be remote in
No, I
certain
understand that,
cases.
and for travel, that certainly would be real helpful.
Oh, you mean, so like some of the people that
But-
came up tonight from out of state?
Exactly,
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
I
they
mean,
could do
we
that.
have a lot of them coming up from Massachusetts and other places as well.
Yeah, you had 3 or 4 here tonight that
Correct.
came up from
And
Massachusetts.
that could have been a big cost savings and speed things along in terms of scheduling and
Yep.
and all sorts of things.
That's a good point. We've had that happen before, but people have come up for a 3-minute item and then go turn around and drive out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you had some of that tonight, and then you also had people that couldn't physically be here because they were away on vacation. But if you had the hybrid option,
Yeah.
they could have been here tonight.
I think the whole thing makes sense to me.
What about public hearings? It doesn't indicate anything for that.
Yep, my understanding is you can use it for that too.
I think it makes sense. Just in terms of moving things along, speeding things up, being more customer friendly,
Yeah, I think it definitely gives the applicants a lot more flexibility.
and the public as well.
Yeah, and hopefully nobody on the board would abuse it, though.
You have to have a good reason, apparently, according to this. and
Right.
Somebody has to say, I guess the chairman would have to allow the hybrid, I would assume it also would indicate on the minutes, so-and-so is hybrid, is remote.
Yeah, and we'll have to go back, like if we're gonna go back to hybrid, you'll see like a new agenda so that people can get in. Yeah, I would think that if we were gonna do a hybrid, not only would you notify Guy or myself before, but at the start of the meeting, you'd disclose that you were out of town or out of state or whatever, not just at home.
Then we have to raise our hands again, or we have to say present.
Yeah, we'd have to
Oh,
roll
that would
call
be good
vote.
to get a little
Yeah.
bit of clarification on that.
I think it's,
Yeah.
does it not say roll call vote?
Saying here. You might
Oh,
have
yeah,
to go
the
back to
last
reading those
paragraph.
motions.
All votes taken during a meeting using remote methods will be by roll call vote.
Yeah, so
That
we
can
have
be
to
seen and heard.
Yeah, so I think you would have to then go to the roll call, and then you'd have to read the
read the
motion.
motion.
So what do we need to do to move this forward?
You need to tell me that you want to move it forward, and
So
we'll
we
get
need
it on
to
the
have a
next
motion,
agenda. I think
or
you can
just-
just tell me.
I'm all
How does,
for it.
how does the board feel? I'm okay with this.
I am too.
Okay,
Yeah, I am,
so-
I mean, I think to me, it's unclear whether this is hybrid versus ad hoc deciding it's remote. That's the only thing I don't like about it. I'm happy with hybrid meetings. I think that would be great. And then not to relate it back to another issue that I don't want to talk about, but noticing meetings. I mean, I think getting more public participation from the people, the citizens of the town is a great thing. But if we don't have an effective notice method, then, but if they weren't checking somewhere, they wouldn't know that they could find the Zoom link anyways, so.
Yeah, so we, post everything on the website. We do
Right.
200 or 500 feet. I do extensive notice for planning board, although like for the solar, I think we notified 3,000 people, and I had like maybe 2 dozen come. Or for shoreland, we did over 800 people.
I'm not coming.
You're not coming.
I'm not
Okay,
coming
thank you for
Saturday.
letting me know.
So
So I
$7.99.
think, as a town, we're kind of reevaluating some other ways we can better do communication. I know it's been a big thing on the council.
Yeah, I mean, I think if
Get it
the
out there.
council and most or all of the boards adopt this, then the council should consider a special newsletter mailing, whatever, to try to let everybody know that, hey, things have changed, and.
it's expensive then if things have to be mailed, so somebody's got to be paying for it. So.
In your case, it's the applicant. The applicant's paying a butter fee for everything that we mail. And public hearing fees. So yeah, if you guys want to do this, your next agenda is not that big, it looks like. So I'll put that on there. It sounds like next month you might have Good Fire back. You might have that conceptual subdivision you did a site walk for. There's a design review application. You might have Down East back. So it's really not a huge agenda. So I think we could put the remote participation policy on there. If I can get the final edits made to the rules of order, I might put that on there. That we already talked about as well.
It's going to make it interesting as a chair.
Having to like look to the monitor, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the council will get to do one so we can see.
Figure it out.
sorted out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate it being, just like so onerous or there are that many people, in reality, I think people would prefer it. And then, once the pandemic is over too, I think people will prefer to.
So my
be in the room.
understanding is that they're working on the technology, so we're still going to be able to stream once we get it working to Facebook, Zoom. They're doing some other things with like Roku and Apple. My understanding from talking to Peter is that there's going to be the board, there's going to be the camera person, but then there's actually going to be somebody also in the room running the laptop.
I was just gonna say, who's gonna run it and admit people or whatever you gotta do.
It's going to take like
Sure.
a couple group effort, I think, to make it happen, at least for now.
Okay. Great. All right, the next item on our agenda is the discussion on the upcoming workshop at the town council and the planning board.
So this was something everyone's talked about for a while. I had reached out to Guy and Sam, the chairs of planning board and project review, and it seemed like everyone was enjoying their summer and no one wanted to come to an extra meeting. So the thought was that maybe late September would be appropriate. I don't know what the board feels about that. The world's changing on a daily basis. So I don't know if you guys want to go forward, but the council's all for it. They want to have a workshop with both boards, and here I think, would want to have a list of some things. Obviously, I think design review, and there's some other stuff. So I don't know if you guys want to do it like before some of more of the downtown stuff happens, or if you want to wait, or what your timing is, and then
I think
what you want to talk about.
I would at least like to wait until we have a full board, so we have one more person joining us.
My understanding is that next week, the appointments committee, first meeting in September, I'm off a little bit. The town council will be appointing someone that the appointments committee recommended.
And then he or she will immediately join at that time? Or is there, there's a date?
So, I would like to get to meet them and bring them up to speed and give them the ordinances. So they could potentially start in September, if not definitely October.
Yeah, they might not be able to provide a lot of input maybe at this meeting, but at least to be there and to sort of listen to what we have to say.
So we could try for later. I could say later in September then, to wait till a full board's appointed. But I think, other thing is you guys would want to talk about what you want to talk about before that. So I don't know if late September, early October.
We sort of have an outline from the presentation that was done with the council.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, I think we did talk about that.
Right, yeah.
It was.
And then I think if there's any new issues, tonight, I think we had some applicants that came and didn't have to do a whole lot. So I think, if we even kind of flip through back, are there other things that stand out that we could tweak to make more efficiently for the board, the applicant, and staff would be something that I think the council would be open to hearing your feedback, because I think everyone wants to make us a little more business friendly.
Yeah, the more ways we can streamline some of these reviews, I think the better. The more that you can handle in-house, I think is a good thing, obviously.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's not something everyone was always open to in the past. They didn't want to put a lot on staff, which is why stuff comes to the board, but I don't know if that's still the purview. I felt bad that somebody had to come tonight for a freezer and enclosure,
I know, there were a
But
couple tonight where.
The standard is a standard, so we have to go by the standards and be fair, so.
But if we go online, it'll make it that much easier.
That's right.
Hybrid.
And I know we talked about it during our presentation that we did, like I said, if they've approved funding for phase 2 and 3 of downtown, and they're having this design week in October, I think at least a discussion of what that process is gonna be, and obviously the council can pass on the ordinance they want, and then we have to enforce it on the one hand, but having that design, it just scares me to have that design week and not know what the guardrails are gonna be, or if they just want it to be total blue sky, that's fine, but then everybody needs to understand that there's a process behind that's gonna have to happen, and especially with the municipal process of meetings, it's gonna take months to actually change ordinances for those types of things, and I mean, you know, just at the meetings they've had so far, it's overwhelmingly obvious that people want housing downtown, and I don't disagree with that, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to allow somebody to build a nice apartment building downtown, so I just hope that everyone has their eyes wide open and knows that and is ready to, whatever comes out of that October session, to, and whether they need a consultant, or it's the existing consultant, or who's involved in collaborating on that, so.
So you'd like to meet with them before that happens, so they are aware?
I don't know that, I was thinking about that, I don't know that it matters, it's really more about process, what actually people are proposing to do, you know, you have to wait and see, but if we really want to have more housing downtown, and we want somebody to break ground in the spring on an apartment building, let's say, well, people better be ready to get to it in the winter to be able to change ordinances to allow that to be something that's even legally possible.
Yeah, I think some of the things you've talked about are independent of the village, of the visioning for the village, but they'll have overlap.
Right.
Some of them will. So I think there's value in hearing from you before, so that when everyone goes to some of these visioning, they'll be like, oh yeah, well, you know, the PRB or the planning board, you know, also were on board with that idea, or that's an issue or not an issue, or, you know, vice versa. But I'll put it out there to Peter, say, if the agenda fits, you know, late September after we have a full board, and then if not, you know, early October. I do know I'm going to be filling up one of their second September agendas pretty heavily, but there's no reason you guys can't come.
Okay.
So I'll put on for the next meeting, just to review what we're going to talk about. Okay.
I think so.
I mean, we could just print out whatever the last slide or something that we did. I
mean,
Yeah,
you know,
so I
make
can
that part of the
pop it in the
packet, you know, that's pretty easy.
Run through that slideshow one more time.
I know.
And then, I mean, and then is the planning board there to sort of discuss this with us? I mean, obviously we want them there, but do
Well,
they
they're
have
the-
issues as well?
I don't think that they have issues.
Okay.
They're going to be, they were doing the solar, they're doing the shoreland, which are their two big projects. As soon as that's done, we're going to shift gears and put out an RFP for a comp plan. They will also be discussing cannabis, which was sent to them from the council. And they will be working on making some of the emergency ordinance provisions permanent changes in our ordinance. So that's kind of what they have going on, but I think they also want to hear from you, because you know, use the ordinances in different ways. I know there's some big ideas that we've talked about here, there, and in the vision. Some of the big ideas are going to have to wait until we update our comp plan, because I don't know, like single-family housing, that's not supported in our comp plan in the village, because, you know, it's dated. So there'll be some stuff we can do sooner and some stuff we can do later. But yeah, I think the planning board's just there to, everyone's there to hear, and the planning board gets directive from the council on what to work on, and they're the only ones that can change.
Right.
Should
I bring up color overlay?
Yeah, I think it's,
Sure.
I think it's good to bring the color overlay. You know, we've never been able, based upon the timing and the pandemic, we've never heard from the council if there's support to start changing design review or changing the
I know.
color overlay. So why put all our time and resources? Because you're super busy, your time's really valuable.
Yeah.
And again, it really is a function of the planning board, but I know they want some input. But if there's no support at the council level, it's not worth your time. So I think you really need to get some input, and
Right.
they might not even really be aware of the color overlay, you know? So that could be some good
The
discussion.
historic mid-century modern palette now is pink and purple, so I think that this idea of a historic palette is sort of out the door.
You know, and then I think how much, if there's interest in design review,
Yeah, it's
Like,
like this whole
how much
Sherwin-Williams
interest?
collection. It's part of their historic collections. I came across it. I was like, oh, well, then I guess we don't have anything to say no to anymore because that's it.
I mean, if you all feel that passionately about deleting those 2 sentences, that could also be something we send
There's
to
nothing in the
planning.
ordinance that prevents polka dots or stripes.
Correct.
Maybe I should have turned off my mic before I said that. But anyway, okay.
Or
Yeah, that sounds
multiple
good.
colors.
Right.
Can I make a motion?
Next item is persons wishing to address the board on any non-agenda items.
Oh, right, sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't see that one.
Looks like there are none.
Any members of the public?
Are there? Yeah, nope. And so I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? So adjourned.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
And,
You need to make sure the Zoom hand raise feature is allowed.
Here's my papers, man.